benefits of that shared. In doing so, we will not develop another system like Dorji's. We are not into a credit reward system. What we do is working with organizations like Dorji to help them explain to the world that they are taking these kind of criteria, these safeguards, into regard and providing a third-party judgment on that, so that Dorji is able to prove to everyone that he applies a set of criteria and is serious about taking them into regard, and that companies in forest management can do exactly the same in that. So that's the kind of thing we are in, and in this, it is of crucial importance for us to make sure that the safeguards for communities, indigenous groups, smallholders, and biodiversity go along with the economic benefits of financial mechanisms such as REDD.
Emma, thank you very much. Well, I think from those four perspectives, we got a good sense of the challenge. It is a complex thing to move from idea to implementation on REDD. And I think there's, the comments raise a number of points that would be very interesting, I think, to delve a little deeper into. And before opening up to the audience, maybe I could pose two questions. The first one maybe to CTEC and Dorji, from a business point of view. Dorji, you painted a picture of, if I heard you correctly on REDD 2.0, of at the macro level, how to make REDD work in a demand-constrained world, at least from a market point of view. There isn't...
McKinsey always has a great way of putting things.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Anyway, that is the reality. From where we thought the demand was going to be, it may one day be, but it's not particularly vibrant today. So, what do governments and businesses do in combination, in collaboration, to compensate for that? What are from where you sit, from CTEC, from where you sit with your plantations, what are some ideas for how government helps you? And I apologize for jargon alert to come here first, or to create a synthetic market, to create, how do you compensate for the fact that we don't have a real market, to make sure that there are proper incentives in place to do what you both say you're trying to do. Yep. Dorji, why don't you tackle that first?
So, first of all, I'd like to say that McKinsey has been doing some fantastic thinking around this space and helping define a lot of the issues. There's two scenarios in that situation. One is that you're an optimist and you think that REDD will eventually come along. Like, how different is the world from 07, right? So in 07, we were all in Bali cheering away, as things looked like it were going to come through in Copenhagen. And they developed an early action provision, which meant that anyone who started doing stuff in REDD, would be able to be accredited for that action, like the credits, in the future when it finally came through. So optimistic scenario one is that we believe in the future something is going to occur. In that situation, government and business should be doing exactly what they're doing in Indonesia, with the hope that eventually when the market comes online, there will be demand from America. Like similar to the Waxman-Markey bill, which almost got through. It got through the House, but didn't get through the Senate. And also when the EU finally come back online, for example, for REDD. So in that context, what's so fascinating about this panel is that you've got a full value chain. So you've got a landowner, and then the landowner, for example, could work with someone like myself who's a project developer to set aside the conservation forests. And then you've got a certification body, because if we were to self-certify, who the hell knows whether or not we're actually counting the carbon correctly? So you've got a self-certification body, which is a global standard. And then you've got science, which will monitor and verify. So this is and McKinsey makes money off everyone. And the value chain is that you're engaged, so I thought I'd get you back on. point. So the scenario here is what is happening in Indonesia. As a really quick example, and I guess for me it's a fascination to be working with paper and pulp, because the reason I got into this industry was for the biodiversity. Like, actually, RED was just a mechanism for me to save animals. That's how it started for me in '06. And in the consequences, I've learned about birth control, education, healthcare, because they're the community requirements in order to protect these animals. So anyway, long story short, paper and pulp has been seen traditionally as an enemy for the longest time for conservationists, right? Because essentially what they do is they take a forest and turn it into paper and pulp. But what if they could become the biggest protectors of the forest by doing it in a sustainable way, working with government regulations in the value chain format that we've just described? And then the only example I'd give to you is one of the challenges that I've found with the land tenure and some of the issues, because when you say government, there's local government, there's provincial government, and there's central government, is that government not only fights with business and fights with stakeholders, but they fight with each other. And you've got this really convoluted situation where sometimes the clearest tenure is where a concession is held by a company. And so my final point on the optimistic scenario is I think that people should be starting today. And I think that demand will eventually come on stream, and hopefully you can bank these credits to grandfather into the future. If, however, there is a scenario where there is no future demand, then there is no question, you must have government and business work even closer together to have business be sustainable by choice because it's profitable, and governments have strong regulations and enforcements to enforce that actually occurs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, now I get an applause. Thank you.
I would like to clear on the degraded land first, on the issue of degraded land. I think Indonesia has got vast land available on the so-called, inverted commas, degraded land. On the other hand, I think we need also to address that the zoning, the land zoning of the degraded land. Is that what they call regard to degraded lands? I think the answer is yes. I think degraded land can be grassland, can be unutilized land, lock-over jungles, stuff like that. I think what the government can actually help to do is, once they've identified this degraded land, I think the zoning has to come in. The land zoning has to be clear so that investors can go into it without having to worry about these land zoning disputes between the stakeholders. On the other hand, I think on the business side, I think especially in our businesses, where we operate, what we do now is actually we're very careful on it. We are doing all our HCVs. And there's so many green concepts that we need to adopt. Example like methane gas capturing on the what they call effluent ponds and stuff like that. We're also moving forward in terms of getting our mills green. That's heading to total what they call zero waste disposal. We're using back all those stuff that we can to plow it back to the field as inorganic fertilizers. We are shifting our paradigm now from the before and now the after. After doing all this, I think certification bodies, and I think we need to look at it. It's a big challenge to the businesses because I think there's so many things that we need to comply with. Then the question raised will be, is it going to be sustainable for all the businesses if we were to adapt or adopt so many policies that's coming out every now and then? It's a big challenge now. I mean, we are still growing, but we know that we need to follow that because we need to have our product to go green. There's no two ways about it. But I think a clear guidelines has to be there. You need to do this, you need to do that. There's so many things that you need to do. So if you fall short of one, you can be zeroed in. So that's the worrying part that we have in the business perspective. On the other hand, after doing all this, I think the incentive got to come into play just to balance off our costs and benefit of it. I think that's my comment on it. Thank you very much.
Great. CTEC, thank you.
Maybe a slightly different mic.
Your mic.
More editorial control.